Yet most of the time we remain healthy. How do we protect ourselves from these attackers that should make us sick?
The answer is that we each have a defender that wards off some of these attackers and destroys others. This defender is our own body. The body contains several lines of defense against pathogens. The first line of defense is our skin. The cells that make up our skin fit together tightly so tiny bacteria and even smaller viruses can't get through. An apple's skin serves a similar purpose. As long as it is intact, it can keep out things that would rot the apple. But even a small puncture or cut provides a way for pathogens to get inside the apple and harm it. In the same way, a cut or wound can break the barrier of our skin. This is why it is important to put a Band-Aid or bandage on it. A Band-Aid provides a substitute barrier that prevents germs from getting in.
But germs can enter in other ways. With each breath, for example, pathogens can enter our bodies through the nose and mouth. But there is a second line of defense. Mucous membranes in the nose, throat, and bronchial tubes can trap pathogens before they reach the lungs. And hair-like cilia in the bronchial tubes and trachea can sweep them upwards so that we can then cough them out. Tears also provide a defense by flooding and washing away pathogens that get in our eyes. And if we should eat something contaminated with bacteria, gastric juice, a powerful acid in the stomach, can kill them.
In many cases, these defenses are enough to protect us from harm, but not always. There are still other defenses, different tissues and cells in the body that together are called the immune system. Many of the weapons of the immune system are found in the blood that flows through the circulatory system and reaches almost every part of the body. Besides the billions of red blood cells that flow through our blood vessels, there are other kinds of blood cells. Different kinds of white blood cells that are essential soldiers in defending against disease.
Suppose there's a cut in the skin through which bacteria enter the bloodstream. These bacteria let off chemical signals that alert certain kinds of white blood cells called phagocytes, which means cells that eat. And that's exactly what they do. A phagocyte surrounds pathogens by sending out extensions of its cell body called pseudopods that envelop the invaders. Once inside the phagocyte, the pathogens are dissolved by chemicals. One kind of phagocyte is called a macrophage, which means big eater. Here, a macrophage has sent out its pseudopods to capture a single bacterium before drawing it into its cell body.
White blood cells are present not only in the blood, but also in lymph, a clear liquid that circulates throughout the body in the lymphatic system. Lymph provides nourishment for cells and also removes poisons and destroyed germs. At certain points in the lymphatic system are clumps of tissue called lymph nodes. Here, dead pathogens and other wastes are collected before being disposed of. Inside lymph nodes, something else important happens. But before seeing what this is, let's first look at a characteristic of every pathogen as well as every cell in the body. Every cell in the body and every pathogen that invades the body has special markers on its surface called antigens. Antigens are markers that tell the immune system whether or not something is part of the body. The first time a particular kind of pathogen invades the body, its antigen markers alert the immune system that it doesn't belong. Inside lymph nodes, special white blood cells called lymphocytes respond by manufacturing antibodies. Antibodies are Y-shaped molecules that are custom designed so that their ends will fit on the antigen markers of an invading bacterium or other germ. Like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, each kind of antibody fits with only a particular kind of antigen. After they are manufactured by lymphocytes, antibodies rush to the site of an infection and latch onto the invading pathogens and make them harmless. In some instances, antibodies clump the pathogens together and make it easier for phagocytes to eat them. Antibodies also enable chemicals in the blood to destroy pathogens.
But the first time a pathogen invades the body, it takes time for antibodies to be manufactured and do their job. In the meantime, the pathogens may have had time to do damage, and the person becomes sick. However, once attacked by a particular kind of pathogen, some antibodies remain in the bloodstream and are ready to respond if the same kind of pathogen attacks again. Also, lymphocytes remember the germ's antigen markers and are ready to make the right kinds of antibodies quickly, so quickly that this time the pathogen doesn't have time to do any damage. Antibodies make a person immune to a disease. Immunity means that once a person becomes sick with a disease like mumps, chickenpox, or measles, she can't become sick again with the same disease.
Becoming sick with a disease isn't the only way to get immunity. Vaccinations also can provide protection. A vaccine contains weakened or dead forms of a germ. These germs can't cause any harm. But even though they're harmless, they have the same antigen markers on their surface as a strong living pathogen. The body's immune system reacts as if they're dangerous by producing antibodies. The body also remembers for the future what the markers are. This means that if we are exposed to the live and powerful germs later, there will already be some protective antibodies ready to attack, and the body will be able to quickly produce more antibodies.
Today, we take many vaccines against pathogens for granted, but this wasn't always true. Take the polio virus. The polio virus attacks the nervous system. 50 years ago, there was no vaccine against this virus. In some cases, the victim's legs were seriously weakened or paralyzed. In other cases, the paralysis was more serious and affected a person's ability to breathe. Thousands of patients depended on cumbersome iron lungs to stay alive. Many people died from polio. The disease was all the more terrible because children were particularly at risk. Parents worldwide were terrified that their children would be stricken. But in 1955, Dr. Jonas Salk developed an effective vaccine. A newsreel from that time gives a sense of the joy this news brought.
1955, a year of anxiety and triumphs. A major medical hurdle was crossed with the discovery by Dr. Jonas Salk of the anti-polio vaccine, which was to spread a mantle of protection over millions of American children. And the scientist entered the ranks of the medical immortals. Leading drug firms shifted into high gear to meet a national demand, which spread to every crossroads despite early controversy. Each hastily set up center became a mecca for anxious parents shepherding little Johnny and little Jill to their inoculations. They're protected, and it didn't hurt a bit.
Today, we have effective vaccines for many diseases, including tetanus, diphtheria, smallpox, and some types of flu. Being vaccinated for these diseases is one of the most important steps a person can take to safeguard his health. Modern medicine has other weapons against pathogens, including certain drugs. Since the 1940s, antibiotics such as penicillin and tetracycline have proved effective in killing bacteria. Antibiotics work by attacking the walls of bacteria, causing the bacteria to explode. Before antibiotics, bacterial infections like pneumonia were among the major causes of death. Today, such diseases are no longer such a threat.
But antibiotics work only with bacteria. They have no effect on viruses, such as those that cause the flu or the common cold. Also, there are bacteria that have developed resistance to many kinds of antibiotics. When an antibiotic is used against bacteria that have infected the body, there may be one or several bacteria that are slightly different and are not affected by the drug. Most of the bacteria die, but a resistant bacterium survives and can rapidly reproduce. All the bacteria that descend from this original resistant bacterium will also be resistant to the antibiotic. For this reason, penicillin and other early kinds of antibiotics are no longer effective against many kinds of bacteria. Indeed, scientists are constantly struggling to develop new antibiotics as bacteria become resistant to ones that already exist.